Yeah, so my name is Marco Bouwkamp. I'm from Evers plus Manders Consult. We're a consultancy firm that specializes in subsidies and grants, as Fernando already mentioned. And well, we've been invited today to tell you a little bit about the so-called SME Instrument of Horizon 2020. Let's see. So during my presentation, I will touch on these different elements. First of all, I will explain to you what the SME instrument is. I will give you some information on preparing for an application for the SME instrument, something on the evaluation procedure and ranking, and then I will conclude with, first of all, some take-home messages and also one slide on grant writing. So I hope that it will help you in your quest for the SME instrument. So, but first, let's focus on the instrument itself. What is the SME instrument? Well, to quote the European Union, the SME instrument is Horizon 2020 funds for high potential innovation through a dedicated SME instrument which offers seamless business innovation support under the section Societal Challenges and the specific part Leadership in Enabling and Industrial Technologies. So there are a couple of things here that are worth noting. First of all, it's about high potential innovation. So you really have to have a great innovative idea to apply for the SME instrument. Then the second one, and it's also in the title, SME. It's about small and medium-sized enterprises, and I will explain what that means exactly. Further, it's about seamless business innovation support. Seamless business innovation support consists of three different elements. First of all, business innovation grants for feasibility studies, business innovation grants for innovation development and demonstration, and then free of charge business coaching. So with these three elements, the European wants to offer a full package to SMEs to get their innovative idea, their innovative product to the market. So then also it's about societal challenges and leadership in enabling and industrial technologies, and I will come to that in a minute as well. These are two of the pillars within Horizon 2020 that the SME instrument is focusing on. Okay, so on this slide I try to pretty much sum up the instrument and give you an idea of what it is all about. First of all, the first pictogram is SMEs. It's all about small and medium-sized enterprises. And in the next couple of slides on all of these four elements, I will tell you in the detail what this means for you and what it means in respect to the SME instrument. So secondly, it's all about disruptive breakthrough innovations. So you really have to have a great idea. It's about ideas with potential on the market, so you have to have a great and very strong business case to be able to apply, and then it has to be close to the market. So if you're having a great innovative idea but it's still in kind of the lab scale phase of the development, the SME instrument is not for you. Okay, so let's start with, I guess, the most important part. What is an SME? What is a small and medium-sized enterprise? Because the EU has very specific definition for this, and there are a lot of small companies around that are actually not a small or medium-sized enterprise in the definition of the EU. First of all, this table shows you what is meant by a medium-sized, a small-sized, and a micro enterprise. And that's kind of the upper limit is the medium-sized enterprise, so we'll focus on that one. So a medium-sized enterprise, to determine whether or not you qualify, you have to look at the headcount, the annual turnover, and the annual balance sheet total. So to be able to qualify, your company has to have less than 250 people working in your company, and then either an annual turnover of less than 50 million euros or an annual balance sheet total that is less than 43 million euros. So if you qualify to these numbers, then you are an SME. But there is a catch. As I already mentioned, there are a lot of small companies around that are not SMEs. And that is because you have to take into account your parent companies or your subsidiaries. So in that case, there are 3 different categories, and I will explain that on the next slide a little bit more detail with an example, so please stay with me. First of all, there is a category called partner companies. Partner companies have a 25 to 50% of the shares of your company, or the other way around, you own 25 to 50% of the shares of another company. If that is the case, then you actually have to include, for example, the headcount of this partner proportionally to the amount of shares that they have. And you have to include that in your own headcount. And again, on the next slide, I think it will become even more clear. Then you have the so-called linked partners. Linked partners have more than half of the shares, or the other way around again, you have more than 50% of the shares of a subsidiary. In that case, you fully have to include this enterprise in your headcount or your annual turnover count or your annual balance sheet total count. Then there's another possibility, the other category, and that is the companies that have a majority vote or dominant influence in your company, or vice versa. Also in that case, you have to consider them as a linked party. Okay, so this is all in words and perhaps a little bit cryptic. I hope that this example will make it a bit more clear. So here you have a structure of 4 companies that are connected. In the middle, you will see your own enterprise with 2 parent companies and 1 subsidiary. Well, parent company A has 30% of the shares of your company, parent company B has 70%, and you have 20% of the shares of the subsidiary. Okay, so now let's stick with the headcount. If you want to determine the headcount of your company to see whether or not you're an SME, you actually have to take the number of people working for your company plus 30% of parent A, so the partner company. So if there are 100 people working at your parent company, you have to include 30 in your headcount. And you actually have to include all the people working at company B in your headcount, because it's a linked partner, it has more than 50% of the shares. The subsidiary, in this case, less than 25%, you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so that means that even if you're a small company of, say, 10 people or 100 people, if you have a really large parent company, a big global multinational, there's a big chance that you're not an SME in the definition that, that Europe is using for that. So fortunately, there are a couple of exceptions. If you have a venture capital, university, or an institutional investor, or a small autonomous local authority as a parent, you don't have to include them. Which is good news, because there are a lot of spin-off companies, for example, of universities around. Universities are large, but still you will be able to be an SME. Okay, so those are the exceptions. But this is something you have to actually also fill out online when you want to apply. There is a self-evaluation form. It's good to do that in an early stage, because if at the end you've written your proposal but you come to the conclusion that you're not an SME because, well, there is a parent company around, you've done a lot of work for nothing, because you're not eligible to apply. Okay, so it's also all about innovation, disruptive, competitive solutions. So does it mean that once you qualify as an SME and you have a great idea that you can apply? Well, no, not necessarily. Here you see the kind of the overall structure of the Horizon 2020 program. You have 3 pillars. One of them is excellent science. The second one is industrial leadership, and then the third one is societal challenges. The SME instrument is focusing on the last 2, so industrial leadership and societal challenges. And there are specific call for proposals within these 2 that apply. And of course your project has to meet the call for proposals. So which are there? I've divided them over 2 slides because otherwise there was not enough room. First of all, there is an ICT call. It's all about open, disruptive, innovation schemes in the ICT area. There is accelerating the uptake of nanotechnologies, advanced materials, or advanced manufacturing and processing technologies by SMEs. SME boosting biotechnology-based industrial processes driving competitiveness and sustainability. Then there is one for space, which doesn't have a specific title, but it's Space Innovations by SMEs. There's resource-efficient, eco-innovative food production and processing, and then there is supporting SMEs' efforts for the development or deployment and market replication of innovative solutions for blue growth. And already in these titles you see a couple of things which are important. It's about, again, open disruptive innovation, accelerating the uptake of the technologies, SME boosting, competitiveness, deployment, market replication. So also in these titles you already get an idea, okay, this really has to be very innovative and it has to be close to the market. So what are the others? There on this slide, it's stimulating the innovation potential of SMEs for a low carbon and efficient energy system, small business innovation research for transport, boosting the potential, there you have again, boosting the potential of small business for eco-innovation and the sustainable supply of raw materials. There is innovative mobile e-government application, SME business model innovation, protecting urban soft targets and urban critical infrastructures, and there is clinical validation of biomarkers and or diagnostic medical devices. And so for all of these, there is a specific call for proposals that you can find on the participants portal, which I will introduce in a few slides later. And there you can download the text of these call for proposals, and it will really tell you what the specific challenges that they're focusing on, what the impact is that they want to see, and what the scope is of the type of projects that they're envisioning in these call for proposals. If you have the time, I don't think it's relevant to go into detail of all of them, but you can find them online. Okay, so already mentioned that it's about innovation, but it's also about innovation that has a real good chance of conquering the market, so it has to be about competitive solutions. And in fact, indeed, the SME instrument is all about market introduction. It's really getting your product from the R&D stage to the market. And therefore you also have to have a strategic business plan which is integrating your application. So you really have to know how you want to enter the market, your target market. So that's also reflected by the expected impact in the call for proposal, where it says that it's enhancing profitability and growth performance of SMEs. So that's really what the SME instrument is all about. Okay, so strong business case, close to the market. So what does close to the market mean? Well, that means that you really have to be close to the situation, that you finish with your research and development and demonstration, you can start, well, selling your product. So from the start of Horizon 2020, the European Union started using this technology readiness levels system, which is kind of a measure of where your innovation is. And you have 9 levels. First of all, TRL 1 is all the way on the bottom in this representation, which is basic principles observed. And then all the way on the top, you will have TRL 9, which is actual system proven in an operational environment. Well, for the SME instrument, at the start of the project that you submit, you should be at TRL 6, which means the technology is demonstrated in a relevant environment. And during the project, you have to aim for TRL 9, so actual system proven in operational environment. So what's in between? Well, from TRL 6 to TRL 7, you bring it from a demonstration in a relevant environment to an operational environment. Then at TRL 9, the system will be complete and will be qualified. And then, as I said, TRL 9 is actual system proven in an operational environment. So this is what you should aim for, and that all in the context of your strategic business plan. So let me go back. At the end, you're at TRL 9. You have your system proven, but you also know how you want to enter the market and what your market is. Okay, so as I said, they want to have this complete package, this seamless business innovation support. That consists of 3 phases, as I mentioned: feasibility studies, innovation projects, coaching, mentoring, and support. And in the next couple of slides, I will briefly touch upon these different phases and give you a flavor of what are the type of activities that you can do in these phases. Starting with phase 1, these are feasibility studies. This can be both on a technological or a practical, from a technological or practical point of view, assessing whether or not your technology itself is feasible. But in addition to that, also an economic viability. So you can really work on a strategic business plan during your phase 1 execution. When you apply for phase 1, you already have to have, well, the framework of a business plan ready. You already have to know what your market is. You already have to have a feeling of how you are going to conquer this market, how you're going to enter this market. But during phase 1, you can further elaborate on that. You can also validate your business model. So apart from that, what are the activities? You can do risk assessments. You can do market studies. You can try to already get the end users involved in your project. You can do a patent search to get a feeling of the IPR landscape of your innovation. Innovation strategy development. You can do a partner search, feasibility of the concept, as I said, business model validation. All those type of activities is what you can do in phase 1 of the SME instrument. Going to phase 2, this is where the actual project is taking place. So this is really your innovation project, and you can include all the necessary activities that you need to do to bring your innovation to industry or readiness, so from TRL 6, as I mentioned earlier, to TRL 9, and also market maturity for market introduction. So at the end, you have to have done everything to get your product ready for the market. So activities could be demonstrating, testing, piloting. You can scale up a technology. Can be miniaturization of components, systems integration, systems design, market replication, and this all again based on this very strong business case. So then phase 3, this is something where there is no funding for. It's just coaching, mentoring, and support that you get for free from through the Enterprise Europe network. And this is all consultancy and signposting activities. So they really help you entering the market that you envision and that you want to enter. So to summarize this part, the SME instrument, well, it's in the title, so I didn't repeat it here, but it's for SMEs, so you have to qualify for the SME definition. It has to be close to the market, TRL 6 through TRL 9. There are specific focus areas in both Pillar 2, industrial leadership, and Pillar 3, societal challenges. And as I mentioned, there are specific call for proposals. So even if you have a good idea, a great market potential, if it doesn't fit, don't apply. Well, consortia are not necessary. You can apply as a single SME, which is, well, kind of interesting, because usually Horizon 2020 is all about collaborating. It's always about collaborations of at least 3 parties from at least 3 different EU countries. In this case, you can go single as one single SME. It is possible, though, to also apply as a consortium of SMEs. So what can you receive? Phase 1 is 50,000. It's lump sum. You just get the money to do your feasibility study, and it's up to you pretty much to spend it wisely. Phase 2, on average, about 1.5 million euros. And phase 3, as I mentioned, there's no funding, but it's free business support. So the funding rates, it's 70. Phase 1 and phase 2, it's 70% of the cost, and in phase 1 it's a lump sum, and in phase 2 it's the actual eligible cost. And those eligible costs is a sum of the direct cost, and on top of that 25% indirect cost. And the direct cost can be personnel, it can be equipment, it can be materials, consumables, well, anything like that which is really necessary for your project. And again, well, phase 3 no funding, so also no funding rate. I briefly wanted to touch upon the budget allocation, because that may be of importance for you to decide whether or not you want to apply. because you see that it's quite different for the different call for proposals. I won't go into detail for all of these, but you will see that ICT and also nanomaterials and advanced manufacturing and processing, for example, and also resource-efficient technologies have much more funding than, for example, the biotechnology-based call or the one about blue growth. So that means also, if you consider the on average 1.5 million euros contribution per project, that also means that quite a different amount of projects can be funded, ranging from, well, if you look at biotech, only perhaps 2, but if you go to the ICT, it's much more. And the continuation of this table is over here, where you see that also for the low carbon efficiency and transport and for biomarkers and diagnostic medical devices, that's where the big budgets are. And that also, of course, has an impact on the success rate that you will have, which I will touch upon later, very briefly though. Okay, so to conclude this section, you may have heard also of the Fast Track to Innovation, which is another program within Horizon 2020, which is also aiming at innovative ideas that are close to the market. So you might, well, in many cases you may be able to apply for either one of them, depending on whether or not you can build a consortium and depending on, well, your project. So I would like to show you a little bit what the differences are between these two projects or these two schemes. So the SME instrument is about selected topics, whereas Fast Track to Innovation is fully bottom-up. So they're not working with call for proposals, but it's pretty much open, not entirely, but pretty much open to any type of technology. The SME instrument is a single participation is possible, whereas for Fast Track to Innovation you always have to have 3 to 5 consortium partners. SME instrument, well, it's restricted to SMEs. Fast Track to Innovation is not. And what is different at Fast Track to Innovation is that there is an obligation to be on the market after 3 years from the start of the project. This is not the case for the SME instrument. Then the SME instrument is unique in the fact that it works with a 3-phase scheme, and one of them is the coaching support, which is not available for the Fast Track to Innovation. Okay, so let's move to the next part, the preparation of an application for the SME instrument. Before being able to think about applying, I think it's good to really look at your idea, look at the strategy of your company and see whether or not the SME instrument is for you. So start with your company strategy, always with innovation, always with subsidies. If it doesn't match your strategy, it's better perhaps not to worry about it at all. So start with your company strategy and define your breakthrough and disruptive innovation. Then, if necessary, invite other partners from the value or from the innovation chain that you want to include in your project. And again, there also it has to match their strategy as well, of course. Well, once you have a number of SMEs in your consortium, or just you may have a potential SME project, but then you really have to shape it in such a way that it really becomes an SME project. What I mean to say here is that there's always a difference between the project that you would define without a subsidy and the project that you have to define to be able to get a subsidy. There are always specific items in the call for proposal that you have to address, which will have an impact on your project. So really spend some time on that exercise, from getting your potential SME project to a true SME project that matches all the obligations and all the elements of the call for proposal. Okay, so next, once you really know that you want to apply, where to start? Well, start at the participants portal. I've got the link to the website on the bottom of the slide. This is what it looks like. And at the participants portal, what you can do is you can get the latest information on the call for proposals. Sometimes even last minute there can be changes, so it's always good to go back to the participants portal sometimes to see whether or not there are updates. It also provides you with a manual for the Horizon 2020 program, and it will provide you with reference documents. So that, if from an information point of view, the participants portal is very useful. But also the participants portal is for the application itself. So there you have to register your organization. When you apply for the first time, you have to get a so-called PIC code, which is an identifier code for your company. It will provide you the template document, and last but of course not least, this is the place where you actually submit your proposals. So just some last things before we can actually dive into the application process. There are a couple of things you have to well, know before you start writing. First of all, you have to focus on the information that is relevant to the call for proposals. In the call for proposal, it very clearly states what they want from you. Address all these things, because that's very important. That's also what the referees are looking for. Try to be complete. Again, address everything, but be concise. You have a page limit of 30 pages, but this is not the goal by itself. If you can do it in less, it's better. Less is more in this case. Be ambitious. So it really has to be this disruptive innovation, this breakthrough innovation, but keep it credible. So it shouldn't be science fiction, but a great innovation that is believable. Provide proof, facts and figures to back up all your statements. Be consistent throughout the proposal, and well, be creative. I mean, if you have something that's not being asked by the call, but it can really help your case, show it. Try to think outside of the box in that respect. So the preparation itself, it's a two-parter. Part A is the online administrative forms. Here you provide information on the partners and on the budget and so on. And then part B is the actual proposal, which includes these 5 chapters: excellence, impact, implementation, members of the consortium, and finally ethics and security. And in the next slides I will go briefly through these chapters to give you a little bit of an idea of what they want from you. Sections 1, 2, and 3, I already mentioned the 10-page max. Well, 10-page max for phase 1 and 30 pages, which I mentioned, was for the phase 2 application. But again, if you can do it in less words, please do so. Okay, first of all, the excellence chapter. Here you present kind of your project, what you're going to achieve, what you want to achieve. So it includes the objectives, which has to be clear, measurable, realistic, and achievable. Here you also state how your idea relates to the work program. So how does it relate to the call for proposals, to the elements that are in the call for proposals. It provides kind of the basic concept and behind your idea, behind your disruptive idea, and also the approach you're going to take. And it provides information on your ambition in this project. Well, what is important here is that you have to focus on clarity. It really has to be crystal clear what you want to do. It has to be credible. It has to be sound, and it's all about this level of ambition. It's about this disruptive innovation. I can't repeat it often enough. I'm sorry for that. Okay, so then the impact chapter. Well, there are 2 impacts that you have to keep in mind. First of all, there's of course the impact for the user, the market, the EU. So that's the demand side. Why is this project interesting for Europe? Why is this project interesting for the society? Why is this project interesting for SMEs in general? That type of information. Then there is the impact on your SME or multiple SMEs if it's a consortium. So here you present your business case. What is your market that you want to enter? What's your market share? How are you going to enter this market, and so on. So this is really the impact on you as an SME. Well, other parts of the impact section are dissemination. How are you going to address relevant stakeholders, and be specific here. Already indicate the stakeholders of importance, and already also show them how you're going to address these stakeholders specifically. Exploitation, so what's your plan for full commercialization? How are you going to get into this market? Something on the management of intellectual property rights, and it also includes a communication plan, which is of course again linked to your dissemination plan. Okay, so how are you going to communicate with your stakeholders. And what is important here is that you have to also focus on the expected impact of the call for proposals. And what is the expected impact for the call for proposals? Well, it's these 4 bullets, and I will read them out loud because this is really important. You really have to focus your impact section on these 4 bullets. So enhancing profitability and growth performance of SMEs by combining and transferring new and existing knowledge into innovative, disruptive, and competitive solutions seizing European and global business opportunities. So I guess this really nicely sums it up what you need to do, right? It's really about profitability, growth, performance, disruptive, competitive, business opportunities. That's what it should be all about. Then market uptake and distribution of innovations, tackling the specific challenges in a sustainable way. Okay, the specific challenges in the call for proposal, sustainability is important. Increase of private investment in innovation, notably leverage of private co-investment and or follow-up investment. So this is all about, well, also the phase after the project. So after you finish, when you're ready for the market, if you have private investment involved in getting it really to the market, this last stretch, put it in there. And then the expected impact should be clearly substantiated in qualitatively and quantitative terms. So turnover, employment, market size, IP management, sales, return on investment, and profit. So really in your impact section, provide an outlook on your turnover. Tell them what your the number of additional jobs it will create and so on. Really be specific on this and provide numbers, and also back up these numbers. So don't just claim the numbers, but also show them how you've generated them. Then in the implementation, it's all about how you're going to execute the project. So on one hand, it's a work plan with clear work packages, deliverables, milestones. It has to provide kind of the interrelation between the work packages and also a timing of your project, so the Gantt chart and the PERT diagram. But it's not only about a work plan, it's also about how I'm going to manage the project. And what is important here is that the management structure and also the procedures linked to that have to be tailored to the project. So you can imagine that if you have a collaborative project within Horizon 2020 with, say, 15 partners, your management structure will be completely different than when you're a single SME applying for the SME instrument. So keep that in the back of your mind when you write that section. Well, if applicable, say something about the consortium as a whole, not about the individual partners, that's later in the next chapter, but how are they complementary? Why are these the right partners to do the job? And then there's also the resources to be committed in the project. And that has to be very consistent with also what you put in the Form A, the online forms. They also provide information on the budget that has to match nicely what you put here, of course. Okay, so focus on soundness, complementarity, fit to the action. So make it very credible and make it fit to what the EU wants from you. Well, then consortium chapter and the ethics and security chapter. Consortium is focusing on the members of the consortium, so the participants, or only one if you're a single SME. So you have to describe the legal entity, but also don't forget to describe the people that are actually responsible for the job, who are going to participate in this project and what are you going to do, but and also what is their experience, why are these the right people to do the job. You can provide relevant publications or information on previous achievements, which can be product developments, products that you brought to the market, and so on. Don't list them all, but kind of take the top 5, I would say. Relevant infrastructure and equipment that is available to, well, do the work that you want to do, and anything else that you can come up with, anything else that may be relevant, put it in there. And you also have to include information on third parties. Well, ethics and security, this is very specific from one project to the other, so I won't go into that, but you can imagine that if you do something with patient information, you have to say something about how you're going to protect these data and something about data security and who is going to own the data and so on. Okay, so the evaluation procedure and ranking. First of all, it's a continuous application. That means you can, well, apply at any time. You can apply today, you can apply a day for the deadline, or you can apply on the day of the deadline. Or I say deadline, I should say cutoff date. So what will happen is you can apply at any time. If you don't make it, you will get quick feedback that you didn't get to the threshold. If not, well, you have to wait until after the cutoff date, because that's when all the proposals will be collected that are above the threshold, and they will be ranked, and then they will come with a decision. So the cutoff dates for 2015 for phase 1 and phase 2, the same dates apply. It's March 18th, well, that was last week, June 17th, September 17th, and December 16th. So those are the cutoff dates when all the proposals are collected and ranked. So the time to grant, that depends a little bit on phase 1 or phase 2. For phase 1, they envision evaluation time of 2 months and a grant agreement procedure of 1 month. So after you get the funding, you will have a grant agreement negotiations where, well, the I's are going to be dotted, the T are going to be dashed, and you will really set up the grant agreement with the EU. So for phase 2, it's a little bit longer. So phase 1 in total is 3 months. Phase 2 is double that, and it's 4 months for the evaluation and 2 months for the grant agreement. What is important to note here with the continuous application, I mean, it kind of seems trivial because, well, you work with cutoff lines, cutoff dates instead of deadlines. What's the difference? Well, there are some subtle differences, but the other important thing is that usually with Horizon 2020 goals, they work with a deadline, and that means that up to the deadline you can change your submission, well, as many times if you like. In this case, as it's a continuous application, once you submit, that's it, you can't change it anymore. So for the more experienced ones on the in the audience that have applied before for Horizon 2020 or other framework programs, this is important to note. Once you submit, you can't change your application anymore. Okay, so the scoring is based on, in particular, the first 3 chapters: impact, excellence, and implementation. There are thresholds of 4 out of 5, so you can get in total 15 points. And the overall score required is 13 out of 15 for phase 1 and 12 out of 15 for phase 2. But I can guarantee you that you have to have at least, well, say 14 or 15, 14 and a half or even 15 points out of 15 if you want to be successful. There's a remote evaluation. As I mentioned, upon arrival they will immediately start evaluating your proposal. And the ranking will be based on the sum of the scores. And it's good to note that the impact is, the weight of the impact is higher. So the score of the impact will be multiplied by 1.5. It may be that it will be a ranking by a panel review, otherwise it's just based on the individual scores of the proposals. And then there are some additional criteria like gender balance, which may be looked upon when there is an equal scoring in the project. Something else which is very important with respect to the evaluation is that somebody has to do the job. And it's good to make this job for the evaluator as well, as friendly as possible, I would say. So be gentle on the evaluator. Evaluators have to assess a lot of proposals. They only have a limited amount of time to read and assess these proposals. So what is important is that you give them the, that you hand the evaluator with the key to your proposal, that it's crystal clear from an easy read what your disruptive idea is. Because as I said, limited time, they only have about 2 hours for each proposal, and that is not just reading and assessing it, it's also writing an individual evaluation report. So that's pretty challenging. So that brings me to some take-home messages. Well, I guess this one about the evaluator is also a take-home message, but take-home messages. Impact becomes before excellence. So this is very important. Usually with Horizon 2020 goals, they first look at the excellence of your project, so the quality of the project itself, the ambition, the level of ambition, the level of innovativeness. But here it's also, or it's not always, also it's about the impact. So it's about a strong business case that you present. Also, I should mention that the evaluator in this case, usually it's somebody more or less with a technical background. In this case, with the SME instrument, it's much more people with a business background rather than a technical background. So you really have to convince them that your business plan is really up to par. So that's a business case not only for you as the participating company, so the supply side, but it's also the demand side. Also, what is it in it for the end users? What is it in it for the EU, and so on. So it has to be close to the market, and what is very important, you have to quantify your statements. So provide facts and figures to back up your claims. If those are not available, you can always rely on statistics or an expert judgment, but you really have to show them how you got to the statements that you present. Then one final slide on grant writing, or well, not final slide, it will be a conclusion slide as well, but a final slide on grant writing. Be smart, so specific, measurable, acceptable, realistic time. So make sure that the claims that you do, that they're believable, that it's crystal clear how you got there, and that it's also realistic. Write directly, which means put a bottom line first. Often what we see is that you have a long paragraph with very useful information, but then somewhere at the end there is the bottom line, or sometimes even the bottom line is lacking. No, put the bottom line first and make it crystal clear what you're going to do. And then readability, so use little summaries, use bullets, innovative headings, short sentences, make sure it's consistent. That all makes it much more pleasant to read, which again helps you in the evaluation. Okay, so the conclusions. What is the SME instrument? I hope that's clear for you now. It's again, you see the four pictograms. So it's for SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. There it's important to do this self-assessment form to see whether or not you are an SME, even though you may have only a few people employed. If you have a large mother company, a parent company, you may not qualify. It's all about disruptive ideas, disruptive breakthrough ideas. It has to be close to the market, and it has to have a great business potential. Without these four elements, you're not going to make it. And well, the first element, the SME, is actually an eligibility criteria. So if you're not an SME, you can't apply. So it's a really nice program because it's a great opportunity to tackle the so-called valley of death. What especially SMEs often see is that they're developing something, they're almost there, but then this last stretch to the market, there's no funding for it. And also, there are not a lot of, what's getting better now, but there are not too many subsidy schemes that are focusing on this. There are a lot of subsidy schemes focusing on research and development, but getting it from that research stage to the market, that's really challenging, and that's exactly what the SME instrument is for. This also means that there's going to be a fierce competition. Perhaps you may have heard of the success rates of the SME instrument. They're not very encouraging, but well, we still have quite a few people registering for this seminar, so I guess you still think that there is something in it for you, so that's good. And I guess what I should say is that although the success rates are low, the people that get to the threshold have about a 50% chance. What I want to say here is that there is a lot of proposals that are being submitted that are just not up to par. There are a lot of fortune seekers. There are a lot of people that think, hey, interesting subsidy scheme, let's give it a try, without really first considering whether or not it's useful to apply for them, whether or not they have this disruptive idea, whether or not they're close to the market, whether or not their business potential is great. So there are a lot of proposals that just don't stand a chance from the start, which means that if you have a really good idea, go for it, because then your success rate will be much better. Okay, with that I would like to thank you for your time. If you have further questions, well, we'll have a Q&A session in a minute. But also here you have my contact information and the link to our website. So if you have more questions later, you can always contact me. Thank you for your time and your attention, and I would be happy to answer your questions. Thanks.